Good question.
Yeah, I think, you know, I was out in my brothers and I had done the weekend, and I think I was living in LA since 2006. I went out there, and I started to talk about doing it, and that's when I started to. That's really when I met part of the crew or whatever, and then but it was just kind of a pipe dream. And it wasn't until really I sat down with my brothers and my dad and started calling Rob that we all sort of got on the same page and started to actually go through the motions of making a film.
Part of the question was, how do you explain the unexplainable? How can you tell someone what this experience is like? I realized that I couldn't. So then, maybe we could show them.
Yeah, you have to understand we've been doing these weekends for quite some time before the film. And everybody that participates, whether it's a convict from the inside or people from the outside, we all get asked, what happened? What'd you guys do? And it's almost impossible to describe. I mean, on film, you can kind of understand why it's so hard to talk about, because you're just digging into things that people don't normally talk about or express, or, so it really was, the reason was kind of some of that, to explain kind of what we've been doing and trying to achieve, as well as the guys from the inside. They discussed probably the better part of 2 years before they decided to actually let it be filmed, because one of the strict agreements they have is confidentiality. Nothing that happens in that room, nothing that's said or done leaves the room. And so they've really been able to count on that. But ultimately what made them go ahead and give, co-sign for these guys and trust them was that they had all participated, even the soundman and the cameraman, and that the convicts themselves wanted to let the public know that what you see on TV is not them. What we see on TV for the most part is just this. Don't get me wrong. Prison is a violent place. It's no place where anybody would want to be. But there are those small percentage of the population that's earnestly trying to change their behavior. It's really trying to, take responsibility for what they've done and repair the damages and, make amends with their families and their kids and their wives and I'm an ex-convict myself, and I know what it feels like to get judged as my crime. And these guys want to see that they're just as human as the rest of us, made terrible mistakes, but are willing to pay for those mistakes in a good way and transform their lives. And that's what they wanted to show. So, for the small percentage, because this is a relatively small population of the men who joined the circle. They all get sponsored in by other men who are already in it. And you can kind of see why. We're talking about some real intense, deeply personal things. So it took quite a while before they agreed to the film. But again, I think it was because they trusted these men, and they had been through the process, and the men themselves wanted to really let the world know what they're doing.
Well, I have a slightly different take. When I used to try to explain to people what I was doing, I'd get a certain percentage of the people who just had a Homer Simpson look on their face. And then the rest of them were divided equally in half. One group was like, why are you helping them? What about unwed mothers and kids and the whales? And the other half was like, boy, that's great. I don't know what you're doing, but that feels great. And so for me, I got angry. And the reception of the public is what I was trying to convey. And so this movie does convey that.
Yes. I was going to say, I think Jairus earlier said that it was sort of a pipe dream, until his brothers came out. I think that was January of 2008. It was a pipe dream until about a month or 3 weeks before we shot, because there were so many sort of hurdles that we had to jump through. It's very difficult to raise money as first-time filmmakers to go shoot a prison inside of a level 4 maximum security prison during a recession. And so the prison was difficult because they didn't know what was happening inside of that room. And if you've seen the film, you can see how the words they use is, we've heard that it's unusual. And so they didn't know what sort of liabilities they were going to sort of be stepping into. And so, everyone likes hot dogs, but they don't necessarily want to see how the hot dog is made. So convincing people to raise money by kind of leading with, we had permission to shoot inside the permission, trying to get permission from the prison, kind of leading with, yeah, we have the money to do it. And then, oh yeah, will the guys inside allow us to do this, and can we find 3 or 4 guys to do this for the first time? There's always a lot of civilians who come for the first time just based on word of mouth, but not necessarily with a camera on them. And so it really all came together probably 3 weeks before we shot. And so it was endeavor. It was an odyssey.
Yeah. And actually, I there was no way to know that we weren't actually just crazy. And this was like a really bad idea until the day we shot it.
Or a really expensive home movie. We didn't know.
People call this crazy.
Yeah,
Right.
it'll never work.
That.
It's never gonna
Not
work.
even that it wouldn't work. The style that you're trying to film this with, how you're trying to capture this is a terrible idea. Should do it this way. Should do it that way.
Yeah.
They're all wrong.
I didn't even believe that, even after we agreed, I didn't know if the film would come with, even when I first saw it, I thought people aren't going to understand what they're seeing. It just looks like a bunch of guys wrestling around in the chapel, and what are they doing? But every place we've showed it, every audience, they reacted the same. They cry in the right places and laugh in the right places and thank us afterwards and commend the work, and everybody seems to get it no matter, and we've showed it to a lot of different kinds of people all around the world, and it seems like everybody, there's some universal getting it that they all seem to experience. So it's, in some ways, it's really kind of restored my faith in humanity as well. It's kind of, everybody has some level of, I get it, which is kind of cool.
Well, that we planned beforehand. We all sort of came. We wanted to. There was one thing that we wanted to tell, and that was the story of how Rob and Patrick Nolan and a few other guys came together to start the program. And so we went about trying to get those interviews and shoot that stuff. It's just an incredible story that if we told it right now, you wouldn't believe us.
But a story all by itself.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. And so we got that stuff, and then we realized that we also knew that the 4 days is where the magic happens. We had to sit down and go, well, we've been to enough of these trainings. How would we go about doing that? We would have to shoot, one circle. What happens in those circles? We've been in the circles enough to know what happens in those circles. We can choose perhaps 3 guys from the outside that'll be, surrogates for the audience, so that we can put the audience in the chair, and then the guys on the inside are the ones who chose amongst themselves who was going to sort of be the counterpart to that, and we didn't know until the day we started shooting.
They didn't know until the day. That day is when they agreed. I'll be filmed. The other guy would say, "No, I don't want to be in the circle that's filmed. I'm okay with the bigger circle, but the one they're actually. I don't want to be in that." So there was some that were okay with being filmed, and some that were like, "I'm okay if I'm in the background," and some that. But these guys that you see in the circle, they all said, "Shoot whatever you want," Yeah. And then these guys that end up in that circle, they've been participating in these events for many years. Some of these guys have sat in circles. Manny, he was one of the first men I met coming to prison. He was a little kid. So he's been there for, many, 10, 15 years before we see this. So it's, they decided among themselves kind of who was going to be filmed and who wasn't. And obviously the younger kids that are kind of just stepping away from gang life and that, they're like, they're a little more hesitant. So we gave them room to, they didn't have to be right in it if they didn't want to. So it worked out very cool.
Well, all the guys who are on the outside, the guys that we shot inside, 3 of them that we focus on, Dark Cloud, Vegas, and Manny, they're all out now, and they traveled with us to support the film. They'd be here right now if it wasn't logistically so difficult to get so many people overseas. And so they are all for it. The guys on the civilians that we brought from the outside, only one of them actually has seen it yet, and he loved it, and he kind of wants to see more. The other 2 guys we've been trying to get to, because we're all in different states, And I think one of them has a little hesitation to watch it because he knows he's going to have to sort of revisit, some of those intimate moments. And the other guy, just logistically, it's been hard to catch up with him to get it. But
don't stop. No matter how crazy it seems, there's a way to do it if you keep going. That's what I would say.
I'd say, what is the story only you can tell?
Yeah.
That's the story you should tell.
That's a good one.